All right, welcome back. A quick little preview here. This is going to be for week 2 of the upper division. I did a preview for the lower division week 2 yesterday, as well as a Eastern European week 1 review. If you're at all curious, I just talked about all the past matches in Eastern Europe, going over some stats, talking about some of the teams that have been kind of a pleasant surprise, like PuckChamp. Also talking about Team Spirit and their debut since being TI champions, and all that sort of fun stuff. So if you're at all curious about either of those 2 videos, those will be linked down below. And before I get into this preview, I'll start off with my fantasy picks for those of you who are just here for that. Of course, this is all region-based, and there's no China because they don't start their upper division until January. So I'm going to be starting off with Southeast Asia, in which I've gone with Fnatic plus mid-1. Fnatic and SMG are the 2 only teams that are playing 2 series this week, which obviously means that they're going to be more favored for fantasy. They do both have pretty tough schedules, but I do favor Fnatic over SMG just because Fnatic has that game against TNC Predator, which should be an easier series for them. But I have still gone ahead and picked mid-1 from SMG, as I do think they're pretty closely matched. For Eastern Europe, I've gone ahead and picked the entire PuckChamp roster. PuckChamp does have a tough series this week against Team Spirit, but it's either them or Empire, and Empire is looking like one of the weaker teams in this division. Not only that, but they are projected to be. So I think overall, if you go with PuckChamp, you'll probably produce some more points. Not only that, but a lot of the players on PuckChamp have also been producing a lot of fantasy points throughout this past week. So definitely my pick there. Next up, Western Europe, and I've gone ahead and gone for the entire Liquid roster plus Diratio. The reason why I haven't gone with Tundra here, even though they're looking like one of the better teams, is they do have a pretty tough schedule ahead of them. They do play against Nigma and Secret, and sure, both of them kind of got off to rocky starts. They are still the teams that I would maybe rank a little bit higher than Tundra right now. But regardless, if you want to put Tundra here, feel free. But for now, I've got the entire Liquid roster plus Diratio, who is obviously the carry player for Team Tickles. If you favor Team Tickles over Team Liquid when they end up facing off against one another, feel free to put their roster ahead of Liquid's. But for now, that's my pick. For North America, I have the entire Undying roster. I've said it before, I think Undying is probably one of the strongest teams in this region. They should finish at least top 2, and they've got a pretty light week. They start off by playing against 2-Based, who is one of the weaker teams in this division, and then they play against Black and Yellow, who's definitely a mid team. I don't think they're going to end up near the bottom, but they're not going to be near the top either. So again, Undying, again, one of those teams that not only do they win, but they have a lot of fantasy point producers on that team. And finally, wrapping things up for South America, I've gone ahead with the entire No Ping roster. No Ping plays up against Infamous this week, as well as King of Kings. Not necessarily saying that these should be easy wins, but I definitely favor them over Infamous, which is the other team that plays twice this week. There's also SG Esports, who plays twice this week, but we haven't seen them play yet. They are actually the only team that has yet to play a series in this upper division yet. And so I'm a little hesitant with going with them. And so those are my fantasy picks. You guys can let me know in the comments what you've gone ahead with. All right, now getting into the actual review here. Again, these are all going to be in local time. I have the time zones posted next to each and every region if you're at all curious. Starting off on Wednesday the 8th for Southeast Asia at 3 p.m. We start things off with Fnatic versus TNC Predator. Both of these teams getting off to pretty slow starts. Notably, TNC Predator is 0-2 right now. They did start off their season playing against some of the toughest teams in the division, that being Motivate and T1, who I would say right now are maybe my top 2 or 2 of the top 3 teams in that division. So they're looking for a bit of a bounce back, but also Fnatic looking for a bit of a bounce back as well after losing to Team SMG. That was a pretty tough match. Team SMG, again, one of the strongest teams in this region, but they're looking for a bounce back here. After that at 6 p.m., we have Execration versus OB Neon. Both of these guys, not some of the strongest teams in the region, but this series could prove to be very, very important when it comes to avoiding relegation. It's very likely that the winner of this series will end up being the one that does not get eliminated in relegation if it ends up being one of these guys plus another team. So pretty important series, even though there's not exactly a whole lot on the line when it comes to major slots. For these teams, it's going to be very important that they win those matches against each other, as we know that it's going to be a lot harder for them to win matches against some of the better teams in here, which Southeast Asia is pretty damn stacked. Speaking of stacked, one of the 2 series that I'm actually looking forward to the most in Southeast Asia, I usually pick 1 series per region, but Southeast Asia had 2 really, really fun series that I'm excited to watch. The first one being T1 versus SMG. Really excited to see this one. T1 is probably favored in this matchup. I think they're probably the strongest team in the region as of right now, and they have been the past few months. But SMG has been proving themselves quite a bit. Even after losing KP, they bring in Raging Potato. They looked real solid, and I'm really excited to see this match. Finally, ending things off on Saturday the 11th, we have Fnatic with their second series of the week up against Boom. That's going to be a tough series. Fnatic really has to show that they're going to be able to stay competitive with some of the top teams in this region here. And Boom, we'll get to see really just how strong they are. If they're able to beat Fnatic, that again, we'll have to see how well Fnatic's playing up to that point. It could be that they're still off to a shaky start if they lose that series to TNC. We'll see. And ending things off, we have SMG versus Motivate. Again, the second series of the week that I'm very excited to see. SMG for the same reasons, but Motivate, again, one of the strongest teams in the region. I just kind of want to see how strong they can be. They had a pretty light start to the season. They played against Execration and TNC, which again are two of the weaker teams in the division. And this will be probably their first real test to see just how strong they are. So yeah, pretty fun week for Southeast Asia. Again, there's 2 of the 5 matches that I'm very, very excited to watch, and we'll see how it goes. Next up, moving on to Eastern Europe at 5 p.m. on Thursday the 9th, we start off our week with Na'Vi versus Empire. Both of these teams getting off to rough starts. Empire, not exactly a team that's supposed to be doing super well, but Na'Vi got upset by PuckChamp in their first series. PuckChamp has looked really, really good, but Na'Vi, that was probably a series that heading into it, they should have been winning. So they're looking for a bit of a bounce back. Then later on that day, we have a series that I'm probably the series I'm most excited for the whole week, and that is Team Spirit versus PuckChamp. I talked about it in my Eastern European review yesterday that I think PuckChamp and Team Spirit are playing the best Dota in the region so far. I know that's saying a lot when there's only been 1 or 2 series played by each team, but these guys have been playing really, really clean Dota. There's not really been any opportunity for either of their opponents to ever come into the game, and I'm really excited to see these 2 teams play. It's entirely possible that Team Spirit just completely outclasses these guys and that PuckChamp was just playing against some weaker opponents, but still, I'm really excited to see it. Next up on Friday the 10th, we have Hellraisers versus Unique. Hellraisers with the huge upset on Virtus.Pro earlier this week. That was super exciting. And Unique having an unfortunate start to their season, having to play against Team Spirit. No team really wants to start their season playing against them, but they've got it out of the way now, but they're looking for a bounce back. They need to win this series if they want to stay in contention for that major spot. Remember, there are only 3 spots in Eastern Europe. Now moving on to Sunday on the 12th to end things off, we have Empire versus PuckChamp. Given with how well PuckChamp's been playing and just how Empire should finish this season and how they've looked so far, this should be a pretty one-sided series for PuckChamp, but stranger things have happened. We'll see how that goes. But later on that night at 8 p.m., we have Virtus.Pro versus Gambit. This is going to be huge. Virtus.Pro notably looked very, very shaky in that series that they lost to Hellraisers. Even in the game that they won, it really looked like it was more just Hellraisers losing in the draft than anything. This is going to be huge because Virtus.Pro obviously voluntarily made changes to their roster after finishing top 6 at TI, and now they're off to an 0-1 start, which, like I've mentioned, is worse than they've ever had in this format of the DPC. All of last season, they didn't drop a single series. So this is going to be a huge opportunity for Virtus.Pro to get a bounce back. And for Gambit, they're looking to pull ahead. These guys split their first week 1-1. They're looking to get off to a 2-1 start and staying in contention for that major spot. So, fun week overall for Eastern Europe. A lot of matches I'm looking forward to, but that Team Spirit versus PuckChamp one, definitely the one I'm looking forward to the most. Now moving on to Western Europe at 2 p.m. We open things up on Tuesday the 7th, which is tomorrow. We have Tundra versus Team Nigma. Again, Tundra looking like one of the strongest teams in this region. And Team Nigma getting off to a slow start. They lose their first series to Team Tickles. They were missing Miracle for that one. And sure, you know, you can't really just rely on Miracle for all of your wins, but Miracle is a huge part of that roster, especially in that mid lane. Roman, who is their coach who stood in for them, is notably not a mid laner. He has filled in the mid role before, but it was a very one-sided series from Team Tickles. They were just kind of able to snowball out of that mid lane over and over. And so assuming that Miracle comes back for this series, this is going to be a really important one for Team Nigma, as it would really, really suck for them to get off to an 0-2 start. However, Tundra, again, looking like one of the strongest teams in this region, so we'll have to see. Later that day at 5 p.m., we have Team Liquid versus OG, which I think is going to be a fun matchup. They both started off their seasons by winning their first series, notably not exactly against very impressive opponents. I know OG did beat Team Secret, but that really didn't look like Team Secret in that draft. I know it's a new roster. Team Secret did look a lot better in their second series against Alliance. So it's going to be fun to see who ends up pulling ahead of this one. I think I would favor Liquid a little bit more. They've got the more stable looking roster. OG, I don't want to necessarily say that their first one was a fluke, but I also wouldn't say that I'm expecting these guys to finish very highly in this season. It would be nice if they made it top 4 and finished in, made it to the first major, but we'll have to see how this next series goes. This is going to be really crucial for OG. If they win this series, that's a really good start to getting their way to that first major like I was talking about. On Wednesday the 8th at 2 p.m., we have Cool Guys versus Team Tickles. Both of the teams coming in from the lower division, going through some pretty big roster changes, pretty big, well, team name changes, in fact, previously known as Level Up and Viking GG. This is going to be a pretty fun one. I think Team Tickles is favored in this one. They looked pretty impressive against Team Nigma. Again, Team Nigma missing Miracle, but they still look pretty impressive all around, all things considered, and so we'll see how that one goes. And then ending off the week on Saturday the 11th at 2 p.m., we have Team Liquid versus Team Tickles. So again, Team Tickles playing back-to-back series. However, they do have a few days in between to practice. And then at 5 p.m. later that day, we have Team Secret versus Tundra. This is going to be a really fun series to watch. Not my match of the week for Western Europe, but if Team Secret's back to their 100% form, if they've managed to get their roster together, get their strats together and stuff, playing against Tundra, this should be one of the most entertaining series of the week. As again, Tundra looking like one of the strongest teams this week. But again, my match of the week going to Liquid versus OG. That's going to be a really important series, especially for OG, as if they are going to be one of the teams that gets off to a hot start, getting this first win, getting this second win here is going to be pivotal for them making it to that major. Now moving on to North America, starting off tomorrow, which is Tuesday the 7th at 3 p.m., we have Undying versus 2Based. Undying looking like one of the strongest teams in this region, 2Based looking like one of the weakest. This should be a one-sided series, but again, I've seen weirder things in Dota. On Wednesday the 8th, we then have EG up against Black and Yellow. EG looked very impressive in their series against Arkosh. They did fall behind quite a bit actually in that first game, but in the second game, it looked like EG back in their regular form. Later that day, we have Arkosh with their matchup against Wildcard. Wildcard, previously known as D2 Hustlers, went through a significant amount of roster changes here, looking like probably the weakest team in this region. They start off 0-1. They did lose to Undying, who again is one of the strongest teams in this region. There's no real shame in that. But Arkosh is still not really a team you can take for granted. I mean, if they proved anything in that EG series, especially in Game 1, it's that they can snowball games a little bit out of control, despite the fact that like 2 of their players are playing from Europe. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I know we're not supposed to know who the players are, but I think we all know now. On Saturday the 11th at 3 p.m., we have Undying versus Black and Yellow. Should be a pretty fun series there. And then finally, ending things off with my match of the week is Quincy Crew versus Arkosh. By this point, this will be the 3rd series for Arkosh and for Quincy Crew as well. And it's really going to be a test to see just how good Arkosh is at this point. If they're actually going to be one of the teams that's in contention with the major spots with Undying, Quincy Crew, and EG, or if they're just going to be another one of those middle-of-the-pack teams that we've been seeing, like Black and Yellow, like 4Zoomers. I know 4Zoomers have been close, but 4Zoomers is a team that, sure, they're very competitive. They just haven't been able to beat the top-tier teams. They've always notably struggled against Quincy Crew, specifically over COVID when we didn't have a whole lot of tournaments, DPC-related tournaments. There were a lot of outside ones that they would enter, and they would always make it to the grand finals and lose to Quincy Crew, and they just haven't been able to overcome that yet. So yeah, we'll have to see how Arkosh does. Sorry for going on a 4Zoomers tangent there when I'm talking about Arkosh, but still, that's my match of the week. Finally, ending things off with South America. Our week starts on Thursday, so quite a few days away from now on the 9th. At 6 p.m., we have Infamous versus SG Esports. SG, like I mentioned earlier, the only team in the upper division that has yet to play a series yet. This is going to be their debut. They're starting off against Infamous, who did lose their first series, so it might be a little bit of an easier matchup for them. We'll see how this new roster does. On Friday the 10th, we then have No Ping versus APU King of Kings. This is my match of the week. King of Kings looked pretty impressive, even in that series that they lost against Beast Coast. They had their highlights in there. Sure, you can maybe look at it that they threw their lead at some point, but still, they did have a pretty considerable lead against one of the strongest teams in the region. It is Beast Coast, though. That is kind of how Beast Coast does it, where they'll just make stupid comebacks like that. But still, regardless, they did have a lead. Speaking of Beast Coast, that's the series that's on later that night at 6 p.m. versus Lava. Lava did also have their highlights in their series earlier this week, where they did lose to King of Kings. But that third game, man, that third game was rough. And so I'm anticipating this to be a Beast Coast win. We'll see how it goes. And ending off our week on Sunday the 12th at 3 p.m., we have Thunder Predator versus SG Esports. Thunder Predator off to a pretty roaring start so far. They're 2-0. Sure, you may look at it and say they beat some of the weaker teams like Infamous and Hokori. But Hokori is a team that I think is maybe underperforming a little bit right now. They have had some pretty tough opponents. They start their season off 0-2 against Thunder Predator and No Ping. But notably, they haven't won any of those games in either of those series yet. And sure, you might say they have a tough schedule. You know, they're starting off against some of the weaker teams. but those tough losses eventually just start counting as losses if you don't actually get any wins to back those up. And so Hokori, this next week is going to be important for them. Actually, no, it's not, because they don't play at all this week. I lied. But week 3 is going to be super important, especially heading into this holiday break. They need to get a few wins under their belt before they go onto this break. So yeah, that is it for my preview. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to leave any sort of comments and stuff down below. Again, my previous videos in the description, where I did my lower division preview and my Eastern European week review. I also did a Southeast Asian one. If you're at all curious about that, I'll link that as well. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys later tonight with my South America week 1 review. That's going to go up a little bit late because the series are still going on right now as I'm recording, and those videos take quite a while to make. So just a heads up, it's going to be a little bit later, but yeah, I'll try and have it up by tonight. See you guys later. Bye.